Thank you so much for watching Landumc Goes There. Please subscribe and hit the like button and the bell notification button. The Beverly Hillbillies didn't feature a ton of meaningful character arcs. It wasn't designed to. The characters in the show work strictly because of how clearly defined they were. All the situations that they were in seemed funny because we as the audience knew that those people didn't fit into most of their situations. And so the show wouldn't really work if the characters grew and changed like people really do. It doesn't have a whole lot of serialized storytelling in it. Its episodic nature keeps things pretty much the same as we go from episode to episode and year after year. Now, just because the characters in the show didn't grow didn't mean that the show did the same thing, because it did grow. Probably the most notable change that you would see in it was its leap from black and white to full color. But another more subtle change was the increased role that Raymond Bailey had on the show. Throughout its run, his character of Mr. Drysdale was featured more heavily with more screen time and more involvement in the stories as time went along. And you really can understand why, because his performances were so memorable that you just can't help but want to see more of his character. Even though that character and his motivations don't change, his portrayal did develop slowly. He went from a straight businessman into turning into a buffoon, or as he called it, a real heel. He was a ham bone, and he was playing it to the hilt. Paul Henning, the show's producer, wasn't just responsible for the series' existence. He was also the one that was in charge of making decisions, like giving Mr. Drysdale a more prominent role in the show. So much so that he privately started referring to Drysdale and his secretary, Miss Jane Hathaway, as the 5th and 6th hillbillies of the series. Luckily for the show's creator, Raymond Bailey stuck around show business long enough to contribute a great performance to this series. He was no quitter, but he did face a boatload of setbacks that could have completely kept him from pursuing an acting career altogether. His life was just full of frustration, and his main goal always was to save enough money to get out of wherever that he happened to be. He stated that his problem was lack of education because he quit school in the 10th grade, and he left home when he was just 15. He worked many nights for just 30 cents doing voices for puppet shows, and many times went to bed with an empty stomach and with tears in his eyes. But we have to be completely happy that he stuck around long enough to turn this character that he played into one that we can't forget. Another actor on the show that really struggled at one point in his life was Baer Jr. He was truly a starving artist. He's best known for his role now as Jethro Bodine, but before that, he was completely broke, jobless, and hungry. He was living day to day from an unemployment check to the next unemployment check. At the time, he was 2 months behind on his rent, and his weight had dropped from 210 pounds to 188 pounds. His morale couldn't be any lower than it was. This being without money had brought him to a point to where he could barely stand it. He didn't have a car, he didn't have a wardrobe, and would often have to sell things that he owned just to scrounge by. His father was Max Baer, who was a famous heavyweight boxing champion, and the junior Baer could have easily followed in his father's footsteps, as he was also an amateur boxing champion at Santa Clara University. But instead of doing that, he just found a real passion for acting. And when he performed in his first play at that university, it changed his direction. After he graduated, in order to pursue his dreams, he moved to Hollywood. But that dream just didn't come easy. He was so broke during this time that his diet consisted mainly of beans from a can for quite a long time before he landed this career-defining role on the Beverly Hillbillies. He and his character of Jethro both came from humble beginnings, and in the end, they both ended up living in mansions. The one thing that he had to change for the role was he had to develop a Southern accent for it. This giant-sized teenager was originally from California, and in order to learn this accent, he studied other established actors that were from the South. He bought albums by Andy Griffith and Jonathan Winters and listened to them hour after hour. He knew that his accent wasn't authentic by any means, and it really wasn't supposed to be. And it wasn't directed at a particular section of the country. It was just considered country Southern. This series is one that is almost loved by everyone. The actors in it were praised so much because they brought their characters to life, and we really can't imagine what the show would be like if the roles were played by someone else. Donna Douglas, known for her role as Elly May Clampett, came pretty close to not getting that part at all. She always felt completely grateful that she was allowed to audition for that starring spot after she was involved in a car accident that left her in the hospital for 17 days. She was interviewed along with about 500 other girls, and they finally narrowed it down to 6. The day that she was supposed to go up for the part of Elly May, she was involved in this accident on her way home. She had stopped to get an oil change when a pretty well-known actor was driving a big old black Bentley and crashed into her and caused her to have this hospital stay. The whole time she was hospitalized, all she thought about, let me get out of this hospital so I can get a chance to play that part. When she was released from the hospital, she got a notice that if she didn't finish the audition process with the studio, that she would lose the part. They told her that she would have to test in 3 days, or the part would be gone. She was still quite wobbly from the hospital stay, but she went in all the same. Once she arrived on the set, a woman casting director asked the actress if she had ever milked a goat. And although she never had, she made it look like she knew exactly what she was doing. She walked over, grabbed hold of the goat perfectly, and milked it on her very first try. This in itself secured her the role as Elly May Clampett. Go back and watch an episode of the Beverly Hillbillies. It's a side splitter every time. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll continue to chase the classics.